Welcome to the channel, folks. My name's Shane. In today's video, I'm going to give you a free tutorial for shooting stills and video with the Panasonic GH5 Mark II. Because this video will be pretty long, what I'm going to do is leave timestamps in the description below so you can skip ahead to each topic if you already understand some of the functionality of this camera. We're going to look at this from someone who's just getting started. I'm going to give you an overview of the outside of the body, the batteries, and all of the accessories, and then we're going to deep dive into the menu and set it up for filmmaking. And then we'll cover some of the basic photography parameters. Let's start by talking about the battery. What makes this camera special? It will work with the original GH5 batteries, which are the BLF19 batteries, or we can use the newer BLK batteries, which give you a little bit more battery life. If you've just purchased this camera and you've got an old GH5, you can absolutely use the old batteries, but the new ones do give you a little bit of extra runtime. The battery compartment door is underneath the camera, and as you can see from the angle of the battery, it goes in this way. Click it down, shut the door, and that's it. Panasonic are great. They always seem to throw in a battery charger, so if you get a second battery, you can charge it while you're using a battery in the other camera. Now this also doubles as a power supply. Simply unplug the end here, and then you can use this USB-C connector directly into the camera to power it that way. Just know, however, though, you do need a battery installed in the camera for that to work. If you turn the camera off, the internal battery starts to charge if you have this connected. You can also use a dummy battery, which is something I've been using for years with the GH5 and GH5S. I'll be using it for the rest of this video inside the Panasonic GH5 Mark II. Another benefit to this camera is it will work with any battery grip for the GH5, allowing you to get twice the amount of battery life. This just screws in to the underside here. Just make sure you take off this little rubber door and place it in here so you never lose it. I've lost one before, it sucks. And it will also work with the DMW XLR adapter. This will just go straight onto the top. This is a great audio adapter and I can highly recommend it. Now let's talk about attaching a lens. Take it off the cover here, turning it to the left, and then you'll take the cap off the underside of the lens and just align the red dots. So red dot here, click it in and turn it to the right until it clicks. If you do any type of solo content creation, you're gonna love the fact we get a fully articulating touchscreen. Panasonic touchscreens are the best. After owning other brands, there's nothing quite like how these operate. They're nice and easy to see as well. I'm not sure if they're the highest resolution out there or not, but they're nice and clear and easy to use in any lighting condition. I've done so many shoots with these cameras and they just work. So these screens get the big thumbs up. Just don't do what I did and break it off. Now let's talk about the SD card slots. So you can pop the card door open by pulling it towards you and then it will pop up like this. We get two SD card slots over here. The one closest to you is card slot number 1 and they go in label up this way. When it comes to the type of SD cards you can use, the great thing about the GH5 Mark II along with the GH5 is it will work with just about everything. This old 128 gig V30 card will work fine in just about every type of codec except for the all-I. If you're going to be shooting in all-I, which is the higher data rate one, you should just go ahead and get some of these. I'll link them below. These are V90 cards. They're actually a little bit overkill for this particular camera, but they're affordable. They also make transferring files to your computer that little bit quicker. To give you a quick overview of the camera, some of the features you'll definitely love about this over here, we have a HDMI out. We also have our USB port, as I showed you before. We have the ability to run headphones out as well, which is great if you want to monitor your audio in real time. We also have a 3.5mm audio input on this side over here also, which is fantastic. On the grip side of the camera, we have an optional remote port here in case you want to do some type of photography that requires that. On the bottom of the camera, we have a point where we can attach our tripod. We also have the pins under here for connecting to the battery grip. Looking at the top of the camera here, we have our shutter button. Pushing this halfway will focus, and then pushing it all the way down will not only take a photo, but if you're in one of the video recording modes, it will allow you to start recording. We also have a dedicated red record button on this side. Now, if you want to shoot videos exclusively, make sure the camera is set to the M mode. If you can't turn this dial, it means the top button here has been locked. So with that in the down position, this doesn't turn. With it in the up position, just by pushing it, allows us to turn the dial. So we get 4 different custom modes just based on the dial here. Then we get an intelligent auto photo mode, P mode, A mode, S mode, and M mode. These are all relative to photography. P is basically fully automatic or program mode. We get aperture priority mode over here, shutter priority mode, and manual mode. Being that this is a hybrid camera, we also get lots of different photo modes. This single rectangular box means one photo. We then get burst photo mode. We get a 6K photo mode. This mode is called post focus, the one with the little flower and hills. And what this will allow you to do is to change the focus point after you've already taken the photo in camera. It's pretty cool. We also get a timer function. So say for example, you're doing a group photo, set it up for 10 seconds, run back into the shot and it will take the photo. We also get a time-lapse mode. Taking a look at all of the dials over here, we can adjust the parameters of the camera in both movie and photo mode by using these top dials over here. One can be used with your thumb, the other with your index finger. We also get another dial on the back that also has buttons on the up, down, left, and right. Let's take a look at this little joystick button on the back. It has 3 different modes, S, C, and MF. MF is not what you're thinking. It stands for manual focus. We have C mode as well, which is continuous autofocus, and S is single point autofocus. Now, if you don't know what they are, continuous autofocus in video mode will allow you to basically continually focus to the best of the camera's ability. Single point autofocus, especially in photography, is more like once you hold the shutter button down and click, it will then lock and stay onto that particular point. So it's up to you how you want to use it. If you're using manual focus, that's where you'll go over to the camera and manually focus the lens. So it's up to you how you want to use it. These quick buttons at the top are fantastic. We get a white balance button, we get an ISO button, and exposure compensation. We also have this new extra button which allows us to say change the color profiles nice and quickly. I'll show you that a little later on. We also get this really functional joystick on the back. Just a quick tip for those shooting in autofocus in face detection mode, it also is a push button. So once you have the face locked in, push the button down and it locks on the face. Far better than when you don't do that. So just a little tip there. We also get an autofocus button over here. This Q button is like a quick menu button. And we also get a back button. The menu set button to get into the menu is on the back of the camera, right in the center of this button. We also get a display button over here, which will adjust what's shown on screen. We get an LVF button, which is the viewfinder control, and this will allow us to either turn that on and off at the same time as the screen. It also has other functionality, but that's basically what it does. The play button is to go back through what you've already filmed. And lastly, on the front of the camera here, we get another custom button. I've got this already mapped to waveforms because I shoot video with this primarily. So you can put it on whatever you like, and I'll show you how to customize everything in just a moment. Up next, I'm going to show you how to format one or both of the SD cards. So from this wrench icon on the left, we go up to the top here, and card format is the first option. If we hit menu set, as you can see, we have card slot 1 and card slot 2, so you can format the cards appropriately. Now right under card format is where you can assign what the SD cards do when it comes to recording video and photos. So we go to double card slot function, go into recording method, and then we have relay recording, backup recording, and allocation recording. Now, relay recording allows you to fill up card slot number 1, and then it will start to fill up card slot number 2. Backup is self-explanatory. It records a backup to a second SD card. So if you're doing a wedding, for example, and you're filming that, use the backup function in case the SD card breaks, or any paid work, for example. The third option is allocation recording. So this will put photos on one SD card and video on the other. If we go back to the prior menu, we also have destination card slot. This will give us 2 different options. It will either allow us to record from 1 to 2, or if we want to reverse the order, we can change it from 2 to 1. Now let's get into shooting some video. So we're going to turn this top dial over to the movie mode, which is the one with the little camera here. And it doesn't matter where the one on the left is. You don't have to worry about that. Now we're going to hit the menu set button, which is this button over here, to allow us to get into the menu. Now you'll be greeted with this particular menu right here. If you take a look on the left-hand side, there's a little movie icon. That's where we're going to change all of our settings. Now, one of the great things about this camera, if you're just getting started, you can set it to P mode, which allows the camera to set the ISO as well as the shutter speed and do all that kind of thing. Or if you want to create the most amount of background blur, you can go over and change P mode into either A, S, or M. A is aperture priority mode, so if you're just more concerned about the depth of field, you can shoot in that mode. If you want to have consistent motion blur, set the camera to shutter speed priority. And if you want to shoot fully manual, go to M. Now, if you're just getting started, I would probably say shoot in aperture priority mode, but it's up to you how you want to work. In this room with controlled lighting, I'm using manual mode on all of the other cameras. Now, if you're not sure what any of the menu options are, you can push the display button on the back of the camera, which allows it to explain a little bit about it. So this says change aperture and shutter speed for recording video. So then we can go in here. So it says the shutter speed and aperture will be automatically set, and it will give you information based on all of the other modes. To turn that off, just hit the display button again. Underneath exposure mode, we have photo style. This will allow us to change the kind of colors that the camera records in, from standard to vivid and all the way through to all these different modes. Now, if you're shooting video and you need the most dynamic range possible, you can shoot in V-Log-L. This means you're gonna have to add a LUT in post-production. If you don't know what that is, don't use it. Just use something like natural or the Cine D or flat profile, and then you can tweak it slightly. But coming straight out of camera, those ones will already look good, whereas V-Log looks very washed out until you apply that LUT. So if you're new to shooting video, give it a shot if you want to experiment around with that, but you will need a program that allows you to drop a LUT onto it. Let's say, for example, you like the Cine D2 profile and you want to customize it in camera. We can add more or less contrast by going down on the right-hand side menu, and I'm controlling this just by using the wheel on the back, the up and down buttons here. You can, of course, also use the touchscreen. We also get the ability to change the highlights, which is something I don't remember seeing on prior cameras. So this will allow us to get less clipping if it's a bright sunny day, for example, by bringing the highlights down. You can go left and right to adjust this accordingly. Same with the shadows, saturation, and hue. Now you can also adjust the sharpness and noise reduction within this camera, which is really cool. A lot of people think Micro Four Thirds can look a little overly sharp. So simply turn this down and you can adjust that in post, but the option is there. We also get a noise reduction, which I always leave at just 0. I've never really ever adjusted that for my particular shooting style, but experiment around. If you find a profile you like and you would think, man, I just wish it had a little more or less contrast, for example, or I want to adjust the highlights, you can do that in camera, and that's your results straight out of camera. When it comes to the metering options, this gives you far more flexibility than a lot of other cameras on the market. So you can go down here and select which one works best for you. If you don't know what these are, hit the display button again, and it says the first one is measures brightness of the whole screen automatically. So that's everything in the frame. Not the most accurate, but sometimes it will just work just to get you through. But one of the best ones here is this one, measure the subject in the spot metering target. Now, if we take a look at the camera, for example, anywhere I touch on the screen to focus, there's a little plus inside it, and down the bottom, it says +1. So I'm slightly overexposed on that particular point. If I move it over to the light in the corner, it's gonna see how it went up to +2 1/3. And if I move it down to maybe where the desk is over here and do it again, it will bring it down. So it's slightly underexposed for that point. That's the benefit of spot metering. Up next, I'm going to show you the different types of frame rates and resolutions. So if we go back into the menu option and scroll down from the top down to the third option, which is that movie reel, we can then go across and select the different types of file formats. So we either have MOV or MP4. It's up to you which one you want to use. There's no better or worse. Some people will argue the audio is different on some of them, but I don't hear it. So I'm just going to select MOV. Now, if we want to go down to record quality here, this is where we get to select all the different types of frame rates. And most of us won't need everything that's in this particular menu. One of the great things about this camera, it allows you to filter the ones you don't want out. So in this menu right here, say I want to get rid of all the anamorphic frame rates, all I'd need to do is tap the display button, and then we can choose which ones we want. So resolution allows us to pick 4K 16:9. And then we can really specify what kind of frame rates we want, 25 or 50p or any. Now, if you're in the NTSC region, you'll see 60 and 29.93 or 97, something like that. And you can choose, all these different filters. Then if we hit OK, in the menu here, I'm just going to see everything that's 4K either in 8 or 10-bit, which makes going through nice and easy. Let's say you only want to shoot in Cinema 4K. The way you would do that is to get back into this menu right here, hit the display button on the back of the camera, go down to resolution, hit Cinema 4K, hit OK, And now we only have the Cinema 4K options here. So this is a really great and efficient way of storing your favorite modes without having to cycle through everything you don't want. Now when it comes to the autofocus and getting the most out of it, there's 3 modes that I think work the best. This one area plus, and this allows you to set up a point where the autofocus will work just by tapping on the screen here and moving this point. Whatever's in those boxes work really well, and it gives you a little bit of play outside of the box, or at least the central box. We can make this far larger or smaller by tapping on the screen and then adjusting the position of the size of the box using this back scroll wheel here. So this is really cool. We can set that up as large as we like. Now if we go back into the autofocus options, there's also one area mode, which was previously on all of the other Panasonic cameras the most reliable for autofocus, and it's still really good. But I found, at least with my testing now, that the one area plus works really well, especially if you're just standing in front of the lens, for example, shooting your own videos as the host. So that works pretty good. If we go back to this menu here, so I would say use one area plus, and also face detection, because it actually works now, which is great. Now I'm going to say that, or preface that by saying it works better in the faster frame rate. So if you're shooting in 24p or 25, then one area mode will most likely be the best. But in say 50 or 60 frames per second, face detection works pretty well, and it's worked far better on this than it has with the other cameras. The GH5S actually got a really great update, which I'm shooting from this angle over here, where face detection is now far better again, but it's still not perfect. If you want the most reliable, I would say use one area plus or one area mode. Up next, I'm going to show you how to customize your settings for autofocus. I'm not going to say this is the best setting to use for any particular application because everybody's doing something different. What I've found with the GH5 Mark II is that the stock settings work really well, but if you're dying to customize it, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. We're going to hit the menu set button again, and we're going to go down to focus. Now see, AF custom settings video is currently set to off. If we hit the menu set button on the back of the camera, we have 3 options, on and set. So we're going to go into the set option, and this is where we can change the speed and sensitivity. Now there's one thing I've learned about all of these cameras doing a lot of solo content creation out in the field, for example. So if you want the camera not to second guess itself so much, turn this to locked on all the way down in one area or one area plus mode. If you're going to be standing over a box in the frame, that will work really well. When it comes to speed, I actually like this turned down to -1. Maybe -2, it just depends on what I'm doing. If you're going to be holding stuff up to the camera, this mode won't be the best one for you, but for what I usually shoot, where I'm the host of the video, and I've got it set to autofocus mode, I will have it set to this, so once it locks focus, it doesn't move too fast. If you need it more responsive, turn the speed up and turn the sensitivity up as much as you like. Experiment around for your particular style of shooting. I've still found that 0 and 0 work pretty well, and there's probably not a huge disadvantage to just using the stock settings over customizing them. Another one of my favorite features is focus peaking, especially if you're going to be doing any type of manual focus. And if you buy a Panasonic camera, learn to use it. It's not that hard. So if we click the camera by using this control over here to MF, or we can use it on our lens if the lens has a manual focus button, we can then go into focus peaking over here, turn it to on, but we want to set it up. So I like this focus peaking sensitivity turned up to 2. And we want to change this to a color that's easy to see in any particular room, right? So all of these are pretty easy to see. I'm just going to choose red for the sake of it. And we can turn it on during AFS, but I don't really leave that on whatsoever. So if we go back to the camera now, you can see if I focus on my external monitors back here, that anything in red is currently in focus. So if I put my hand in front of this and focus closer, you'll see the focus lines show up on my hand here. As you can see, my thumb's in focus right now, and there you go. So that's focus peaking. Very, very powerful for shooting in manual focus. One of the new options we have on the Panasonic GH5 Mark II is the one area AF moving speed currently set to fast. This allows us to change where the box position is by using the joystick, and it will go nice and quickly. But some people may find that a little bit too fast, so we can change this to normal. This allows it to go a lot slower. So to control this, I'm using the joystick on the back of the camera. And now that's set to slow. I actually prefer this a little bit slower. It's more accurate that way. But the advantage of this is, the only time you really use the joystick for that is if you've got your eye up to the camera, right? So I prefer just to use the touch screen to move it around at any speed that I like. So it's got that type of capability as well. I much prefer using the touch screen as a focus point. Up next, I'm going to show you how to set the white balance for video. So thanks to this button on the top, we have a dedicated white balance button. We push that, we get all of these different options in camera. Now, all these AWB ones are variations on auto white balance. So there's not a lot of difference to the eye, but auto white balance C is a cooler look and W is a slightly warmer look. If you're shooting outside where the cloud cover changes, then this mode can sometimes get you in trouble. But generally speaking, if you're indoors, you can still get away with it. But I prefer to set my own custom white balance. Now, I can't find my white balance card right now. I'm not exactly sure where I've left it. So I'm just going to use a white box, which probably isn't ideal. All of these four along the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, allow us to store presets. So if you shoot in the same room all of the time or one of 4 different places, you can store white balances in each of those locations and then recall them. So yeah, this isn't the best, this isn't the best way to do a white balance, but it's all I got right now. So we're going to hit up on the button dial over here. And then we're going to go to set. Oh, you can either tap the screen or click the shutter. It doesn't really matter. And that allows us to white balance nice and simply. Again, don't use whatever that box is. Get a white balance or a gray card. Gray cards work really well. A lot of people think they're just for exposure, but a lot of them are white on the other side, or they have a white crosshair, which also allows you to get a great white balance. So yeah, links to those will be below. Now, if that's not quite right, you want to adjust that, we can hit the white balance button again, go down to adjust. Now, what I found with the majority of the Panasonic GH series cameras is that 3 down and 3 across looks the best to my eye, depending on your particular lighting. Now, experiment around with this. It makes the colors slightly warmer, but straight out of camera, a lot of the time, it looks a little bit better. And some people like to go over this way, 3 and 3 down. This is something I found. And then after I talked to a lot of other Panasonic owners, they're like, yeah, I do this as well because it just looks better on the skin tones. This works exceptionally well if you have an older GH5. They're overly green in their appearance. This camera has a little bit of that, but nowhere near as much. So you might find that even 2 down and 2 across makes your image far more pleasing. Up next, we're going to talk about the quick menu, which you can access by the Q button on the back of the camera. So let's push that once and it will bring up this menu. Now, this is a touch screen, unlike my broken camera over here, but you can select everything by using either the joystick here, which makes it far easier, the joystick on the back of the camera, or you can just touch and change options that way. So you can cycle through things by using these controls here, this back wheel. You can cycle through all the different modes as you get into them. So using the joystick, I can go over to, say, this mode here, and then using this back dial, I can then choose which one I want. Whatever we want to choose, we can hit the menu set button, and then we're done. You can just get out of it again by pushing the shutter button. That will take us out. There's also a back button next to the trash can, right at the back or the base of the camera. Now, one of the best things about Panasonic cameras, even till this day, even with the old Panasonic GH5, is the audio preamps. They're fantastic, and in this camera, they took it to the next level. They sound basically the same, but you get a little bit more flexibility. So from the main menu here, hit the menu set button. We can go down to where the microphone is, just here. And we have options to display the recording level, which should always be on by default. So yeah, we can also mute the sound input. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that, but this is the one I want to show you here. Sound record level adjustment. This is great. As you can see, my voice is making this peak slightly, so we can bring this down to, say, -12. Now, one of the reasons why this is slightly better is we can also go all the way down to -18 dB, which is something the prior cameras couldn't do. So I really like the fact they've done that. I found a lot of the time, somewhere between -6 and -12 is more than enough for wireless packs. If you're using shotgun microphones, for example, you may need to bring it down just a little bit more. But overall, very flexible and very powerful. You can just hit the set button on screen again, or use the menu set button on the back. If you're going to be monitoring audio in real time with headphones, you can plug in the headphones on this side of the camera over here. And we can also set the level by going to the second microphone down on the top menu here and changing the level. You can also do this while you play back a clip, but you can set it to wherever you like. I like to always set this up a little bit louder than normal. So 12 for me, that'd probably do the job, but it depends on your headphones. It depends on how loud it is around you as well. Let's cover the image stabilizer. So if you're going to be doing any type of handheld work, you want to know how this works. So let's get into this. You get into it by accessing the bottom icon on the second row from the video icon on the far left. Click on Image Stabilizer. It's on by default, but it's not at its maximum by default. See how it says E-stabilization? You can choose to turn this on. Some people don't like it. I would say experiment and work out what works best for you. It does kind of crop slightly in that particular mode. Boost IS is what you want on for a lot of the time. I'm going to explain why. So if I'm holding this handheld like this, as you can see, boost mode, it makes it look like it's on a tripod, and I'm not that steady, right? I just had some caffeine before, but this looks extremely steady. What you want to do is basically map a button to turn this on and off. While you can just leave it on, and it's much more fluid when you go pan left and right like this, I like to have the ability to turn boost on and off. So on the back of the camera here, we have this back button. I like to use this as my IS lock button. So to get into the custom modes here, you can simply hold that button down and it will bring up this menu here. I'm just going to put this back down on the table to do this a bit easier. This allows us to put any of the camera features on that button just by holding it down. It pops up with this menu. So I like to do this by going back into E-stabilization here and go up to Boost IS, hit the menu set button and done. So now this is an unstabilized lens, right? If I turn the IS boost off, you see in the top right hand corner the hand with the little sort of shakes next to it, that's currently off. With it on, the box comes up and it looks far more stable, right? So this is me trying to be as stable as possible. It still actually looks really good. And this is me now with the boost IS on and it looks far more stable. And unlike the GH5, it's not as sticky when you pan. So yeah, designate that back button. It makes it nice and easy to find rather than having to search through the menus. Up next, I'm going to show you how to set the shutter speed to shutter angle, which is my preferred way of shooting video. So hit the menu set button. We go into both the top menu on the left and then the top menu in the middle here. And we're going to go down to the SS gain operation. It's currently set to SEC ISO. We're going to change it to angle. Now, if we go back to the camera, you can see that the shutter speed is now set to 180 degrees. We can change that nice and simply here by using the back control. We can set that to wherever we like, but if you want it to remain consistent with natural motion blur, set it to 180 degrees. Up next, I'm going to show you how to set up the red recording indicator, which allows you to see easily on screen or on an external monitor to let you know that you're recording. It's a big red box that turns up. I love this feature. I leave it on 100% of the time. So it's a little bit tricky to find, but if you go to the second option on the left, which is that little cogwheel, and then go across to the second camera option, it gets a little confusing here. I wish they just had 1 and 2 on them or something to make it look a little easier. Go across to red record frame indicator. Now, if you can't see it, you're on the wrong option. So just make sure you are on this page right here, page 2 of that particular option. And then we're going to hit red record frame indicator. I'm going to turn that on. So now when we hit record, we'll see that red box show up on screen. Up next, we've got a 2-in-1. This will show you how to store a preset into C1, 2, 3, or 4, as well as access the slow motion or variable frame rate option. The higher frame rates give you the slow motion. So let's do this. Hit the menu button. As you can see, I'm in movie mode on the top of the camera and it's currently set to 4K 25p. We want to change this, go all the way down here to Full HD 25p in 8-bit. You can see it says VFR available. That means variable frame rate can be available. We're going to hit that option. Now, 2 options down from where we were, we have the variable frame rate and it's currently set to off. We're going to turn that on by using the back dial. And by using the touch screen here, we can choose whatever we like. We can go 100 frames per second, 125, 150, or whatever the case may be. 4 times slower for me is more than enough and it still keeps the quality quite good. Any higher than about 125, it starts to look pretty bad. So set it to 100 and you're good to go. Hit set. And now we want to save that into custom 1, 2, 3, or 4, and I'll show you how to get there now. So we go down to the wrench, we go across to the cog, and then we go save to custom mode. I'm going to save this to C1, custom mode C1. It will ask if you want to override it, then hit yes. Now with the top dial still set to movie mode, I'm going to go back and just switch this back to one of the 4K modes. It doesn't really matter what it is for the sake of this demonstration. Now, if I'm shooting at 4K 25p and I want some slow motion, all I need to do is to turn this dial to C1. There's two tools I love to assign to this custom button on the front of the camera: waveforms and vectorscopes, or both. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So hold this button down. And as you can see on screen here, we have all these extra options we can assign to that button. We're going to go down to, I think it's a few pages down here. Click on that. Now you can just assign either the waveform monitor or the vector scope to that button, or both. So we're going to select both and hit the menu set button. Now there's one small caveat to this, is that it will only appear on the selfie screen, and I'll show you that right now. So we'll push the button and there we go. There's the waveform. It's a bit hard to see, but we can, of course, now resize this by using this control over here. Once we tap on it, there we go. We can have it as large or as small as we like. It's actually quite easy to see when I'm not, on the wrong side of the camera here. Now, we can just hit the shutter button halfway and it will lock it into place. If we hit that custom button again, there we go. We can cycle through the vector scope and also the waveform just by pushing that button. Hit it a third time, it disappears, and this will allow us to choose the right one for the job. Another one of the great features with this camera is the ability to switch between PAL and NTSC regions, including true 24 Hz. So I'll show you how to do that right now. On the left, we have a wrench icon. So we go there, over to the second wrench icon, and in this menu, we can set the system frequency. Mine's set to PAL because I'm in Australia. If you're in North America, you can switch it to NTSC, and we get the 24 Hz option at the bottom. Now, as soon as you change this, a message will come up on screen asking you to turn the camera off and on, and then it will be set. Up next, we're talking about some of the photography aspects of this camera. This will just be a quick guide. I'm not a pro photographer. Hit the menu set button and it will bring up this menu here. As you can see, we've got photo style. So this will allow us to change into all of those different profiles we saw earlier. You can select which one you want for your particular use case. Now, aspect ratio is important. If you're shooting mostly videos and you want your photos to overlay nice and easily, you can choose 16:9, which is the video aspect ratio, or you can set it between 4:3, 3:2, and 1:1, which will work great if you're shooting professional Instagram pictures. Sort of an oxymoron anyway, but I like to leave mine set to 16:9. Now, when it comes to picture quality, we can choose all of these different options. If you want to shoot raw, you can. If you want to shoot raw and standard, you can. Raw and fine, standard, or fine. I just leave mine set to fine. I don't shoot raw. I probably should get one of those t-shirts, right? Anyway, this will give us 3 different picture file sizes. So I would just leave this set to the top one, 15M, allowing us to get a far larger image saved. It's always better to have a little bit extra than a little bit less. And maybe, I don't know, at least for my particular use case, I want the largest image possible. And if you do any type of printing, this will be the best choice. There's also a number of other features you can customize when it comes to taking photos, one of which is the silent mode. You can turn this on or off, which will stop the beeping. So if you're somewhere where you don't want to hear that all the time, you can set that to on. And as I go to take a photo, it's dead quiet, even though it's autofocusing. I can tell by the screen here. So that's really great. You can see the little icon on screen that says it's got the speaker sort of muted. That's really cool, or crossed out there. We can also go down to burst rate. We can select high, medium, or low. You can adjust that to suit your own needs. Now we can also change the shutter type, but if you want to change that, you have to have silent mode set to off, and then go down to shutter type. It's set to mechanical shutter. There's also electronic here as well. If you hit the display button, it will talk you through all of the different modes. I just leave it set to mechanical here. When it comes down to it, these kind of modes are very specific. Most people will probably just leave the shutter type set to mechanical because it works, and it works reliably. If you're going to be taking a group photo, for example, and you want to change the self timer, you can do that nice and easily. So go to the camera icon on the top left, go all the way down to the second camera icon, and then go into the self timer option. This allows us to set a 10-second timer with 1 photo, a 10-second timer with 3 photos, which is my preferred way of doing it. We can set a 2-second option as well, and we can also select what we want as our custom. So if we click on the custom one here, we can go down to set, and then we can change this to any particular amount of time. So it's up to you how you want to use it. I like the 10-second with 3 mode here, so I'm just going to go back back to here, and that would be the one that I will use. So after 10 seconds, you'll get 3 photos. The GH5 Mark II also has live streaming capabilities. Now, I've timestamped this for one reason, only because of this setup right now. I can't actually showcase that to you. I'm going to do that in a dedicated video. The way everything's configured and connected right now, it doesn't allow me to do that. So I'm going to showcase that in a future video. So just know this camera can connect to your Wi-Fi and then stream directly to the web or a hotspot on your phone. I can't wait to showcase that actually. So if you're not already subscribed, please do so. I'm going to have a video dedicated to live streaming coming up. Let's talk about the Lumix Sync app. I've got the camera connected to my phone via Bluetooth, which is awesome. There's also a Wi-Fi option here. This allows you to import images, remote shooting options, shutter remote control. We also have live streaming functionality up here. One of the great things about having this app connected, say for example, we're away from the camera and we want to hit record, we can load up the shutter remote control and hit this button here to just start recording. And then the camera starts recording. You can see the red ring around the screen. If we hit the record button again, it stops and it's almost lagless, which is awesome. It just feels like I've gone like this and hit the record button. I don't notice a huge difference in it. Being that I'm also outputting over HDMI here, I'm not hearing the beep in the room, but without the HDMI cable, you will hear a beep. If you own a Panasonic S5 or GH5 Mark II, this Lumix app is really cool. And if you own a GH5 standard, the old app still works extremely well. When it comes to the Panasonic lenses, I'm gonna give you a quick overview of my favorite 4. My most favorite one is the 12mm f1.4 prime. This is the equivalent of a 24mm f2.8 on a full frame camera, and it gives you lots of background blur. It has a minimum focusing distance to die for, and it just gives you a really great look. One of the great things about this lens is I can take it outside, for example, and the camera's in reach, but I'm getting a really wide field of view. Definitely my favorite based on its performance and build quality. A very close second is the 15mm f1.7. If I had to recommend any of these lenses for anybody, I would say this would be the one to buy based on performance and value for money. It is really great. It has an aperture ring as well. It's the Panasonic Leica one, so the build quality is great. It's nice and small, compact, and that's what Micro Four Thirds is all about. Now, one of my favorite lenses and one I'm using on my Panasonic GH5S over here is another one of these 25mm f1.7 lenses. These are super inexpensive. They're very light. They do have a bit of focus breathing, but if you're doing static shots like this, I think they look great. Based on the price and performance, they're awesome. I have 3 of these. I like them that much, so they're really great. And you might laugh, but the 12-60 kit lens is one of my favorites. I have 2 of these and I have no plans on getting rid of them. This might not be the fastest lens in the world, but what I love about it is it's weather sealed, it's nice and light, and paired with something like the GH5 Mark II, which has fantastic IBIS and image stabilization, this works a treat. Thanks for watching, folks. My name's Shane. I hope this video has been helpful. It's been a beast to put together, so if it has been, please leave a thumbs up. I appreciate that. Again, come back very soon. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to do a live stream tutorial on how to get the most out of the Panasonic GH5 Mark II for live streaming. Thanks again. Catch you soon. See ya.